The vast majority of people in English-speaking countries, and a large number of people in India, have heard about the Falcon Heavy. Significantly less people know that the Falcon Heavy was originally going to have used external fuel lines. Currently, in order to make the center core last longer than the radial boosters, the center core will throttle down shortly after liftoff. This decreases the fuel consumption of the center core, allowing it to burn for longer. While this is a way that you can make the center core burn for longer, you can also use external fuel lines to do this, and it is a much more efficient way. For those of you who don't know, external fuel lines are fuel transfer pipes that connect the boosters to the center core. In theory, this would make it so that the center core would only burn fuel from the external fuel tanks until those fuel tanks were expended, and would make the rocket more efficient because of wet mass relative to dry mass laws. The higher the ratio of a vehicle's wet mass to dry mass, the more efficient the rocket is, because dry mass is another word for dead weight. Fuel tanks are dry mass. Because of the fuel lines, the center core would have been fully fueled after booster separation. This would increase the wet mass to dry mass ratio of the Falcon Heavy, and make it a more capable launch vehicle. So why didn't SpaceX do this? The main reason why SpaceX ditched fuel lines in the Falcon Heavy is because of something called fuel sloshing. This is when the propellant within the fuel tanks begins to rock back and forth within the tanks. This rocking motion can knock against tank walls with enough force to damage them under the right conditions. Also, this movement of large quantities of liquid can create reaction forces that will make aircraft and even trucks less stable. This can be seen in the statistic that a higher percentage of trucks carrying liquid payloads are in accidents every year compared to trucks with solid payloads. So, this is a major problem. But why did it make Falcon Heavy lose its fuel lines? Well, fuel lines will transfer fuel between fuel tanks. This motion of fuel from one place to another will increase the magnitude of the fuel sloshing, because this new propellant will slam into the original propellant and begin to move it. But this isn't just a problem when fuel lines are being used. When rockets start turning, their fuel will appear to be moved in a direction because of inertia. This will then start the rocking motion that is fuel sloshing. So yes, now we recognize that this is a problem, but how do we fix it? Currently, the most common solution is to use slosh baffles, which are just big, heavy rings that are stuck in the walls of tanks. When slosh waves form, they will collide with the slosh baffles, which minimizes the maximum height of the slosh wave, and decreases the influence that the wave can have on the rocket's trajectory. Outside of using big, heavy pieces of metal that decrease the efficiency of a rocket, people can also use solid fuel rather than liquid fuel, because solids can't slosh. Solid fuel also has the advantage of being more dense, so you can stick more of it in the same amount of space, although solid propellants do tend to be less efficient than liquid propellants. People have also been working on improving the control systems of rockets so that they minimize fuel sloshing. This is done by turning in the opposite direction that the wave is traveling in. This will remove energy from the wave rather than adding energy to it. Think of it like a swing. If you swing your feet at the right time, then you will go higher and higher after each oscillation of the swing. This is the same thing but in reverse. Of course, this also has the downside of needing some way to tell where the slosh wave is so that the rocket can turn at the exact right time. Another way that fuel slosh can negatively affect spacecraft occurs during the coast phase of missions. While the craft is drifting through space, solar radiation will begin to heat it. This can cause the propellant to evaporate and expand. If left unchecked, this can increase tank pressures to the point where they exceed the maximum pressure within the tanks, which will cause the tank to explode. This means that the gaseous propellant that fills up the tank during coasts must be vented. However, engineers don't want to accidentally vent the liquid propellant, because then you're just wasting propellant. So a process known as fuel settling is used. The goal of fuel settling is to use artificial gravity to separate the gas from the liquid. This happens because, just like on Earth, gas is less dense than liquids, so it will rise above the liquid where it can easily be siphoned off. As many sci-fi fans know, there are two ways to make artificial gravity. The first is frequently called thrust gravity in science fiction. This is when a craft fires its engines constantly, which mimics the effect of gravity because all things with mass have inertia. Inertia is the ability of an object to resist a change in motion. When a car turns at high speeds, we will get pushed in the opposite direction because of inertia. This is because the car is turning while we are resisting that change in motion. So we keep going straight while the car moves to the left. This creates the illusion that we are moving to the right. This effect can create gravity because the spacecraft will accelerate in a straight line while the propellant on the inside tries to resist that change in motion. This creates the illusion that the propellant is being pulled backwards. This method of creating artificial gravity is frequently used in shorter duration coasts because you need to consume propellant to run the engines that are creating gravity, which is something that most of us saw if we watched the recent Mars rover launch. The center upper stage that sent the rover out to Mars had tiny reaction control system thrusters firing in order to settle its propellant. The other kind of gravity that sci-fi fans all know and love is rotation gravity, or spin gravity. This is when the entire fuselage is spun, and it produces gravity because of centripetal force. Centripetal force is the constant force that allows objects to travel along a curved path. Normally, an object can't travel along a curved path because a circle is not a direction, and objects can only travel in directions. Centripetal force is the force that will shift the path of the object into a circular shape. Because the centripetal force is changing the direction that the object is traveling in, the stuff inside will be pulled downwards because of inertia. Artificial gravity is also used in space to bring the fuel from the fuel tanks into the engines. Have a nice day and don't die.